The neon sign flickered like a dying heartbeat outside the dusty roadside diner, casting erratic shadows across the cracked asphalt of Route 66. It was just past midnight in the heart of the Nevada Badlands, where the desert wind whispered secrets to the saguaros and the stars hung low enough to touch. Inside, Emily Harper wiped down the Formica counter for the third time that night, her hands raw from the bleach, her apron stained with the remnants of a slow shift. At 32, Emily carried the weight of too many unpaid bills and a heart scarred by a husband who'd vanished 5 years ago, leaving her with a stack of debts and a promise to her late mother to keep the family diner afloat. The place was her anchor, a relic from better days, but lately it felt like a sinking ship. The last customer had left hours ago, and the register echoed empty. She glanced at the eviction notice taped to the back door, final warning from the bank, due tomorrow. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them away. Survival didn't allow for weakness. The rumble started faint, like thunder rolling in from the horizon, growing into a symphony of growling engines that shook the windows. Emily froze, her rag mid-swipe, as headlights pierced the darkness, dozens of them slicing through the night like knives. A convoy of motorcycles pulled into the gravel lot, their chrome gleaming under the moon, kicking up clouds of dust that swirled like ghosts. There were about 40 of them, weathered men in leather vests emblazoned with the faded emblem of the Iron Oath Riders, a brotherhood forged in the fires of old wars and unbreakable vows. At their head rode Jacob Thorne, a broad-shouldered veteran in his late 40s, his salt-and-pepper beard framing a face etched with lines from battles both seen and unseen. His eyes, sharp as desert hawks, scanned the diner as he killed the engine of his vintage Harley, the silence that followed heavy with the scent of hot metal and exhaust. The bikers dismounted in a wave, their boots crunching gravel, laughter and low murmurs cutting the stillness. They were road-weary, fresh from a memorial ride honoring a fallen brother, their stomachs hollow after hours on the endless blacktop. Jacob led the way inside, the bell above the door jingling like an alarm. Emily's heart raced. Stories of rough crowds flooded her mind, but there was no malice in their postures, just the quiet hunger of men who'd stared down worse than an empty plate. "Evening, ma'am," Jacob said, his voice gravelly but kind, tipping his head as the group filed in, filling the booths and stools. They ordered simple: burgers, fries, black coffee, nothing fancy, but the sheer number of them turned her quiet night into chaos. The grill sizzled to life under her hands, the aroma of searing beef and onions filling the air, mingling with the faint tang of leather and rain-dampened denim. As the orders piled up, Emily moved like a shadow, flipping patties with practiced ease, her mind racing. The cash drawer was bare. She'd have to comp half this if they couldn't pay, and that would sink her deeper. But watching them, tired eyes lighting up at the first bites, stories exchanged in hushed tones about lost comrades and roads not taken, something stirred in her. Jacob sat at the counter nursing his coffee, his gaze lingering on the faded photos behind her. Emily as a girl with her parents, the diner in its heyday. "This place got a name?" he asked, breaking the rhythm of her work. "Harper's Haven," she replied softly, sliding a plate his way. "Been in the family forever, trying to keep it that way." He nodded, chewing thoughtfully, the weight of unspoken understanding passing between them. The night wore on, plates emptying, refills poured. When the last biker pushed back from his stool, wallets came out, crisp bills laid down, more than enough to cover the tab and then some. But Jacob held up a hand. "Hold on, brothers." He stood, pulling an envelope from his vest, thick with cash pooled from the ride. "Ma'am, we don't come here often, but we remember faces like yours, ones that feed the road without asking questions." Emily's breath caught as he slid it across the counter. "This is for the meal, and whatever else you need to keep these lights on." Her hands trembled as she opened it, the amount blurring through sudden tears. enough to cover the eviction, with extra for repairs. The bikers watched in silence, their faces a mosaic of quiet respect, the kind earned from years of keeping promises in a world that forgot them. But it wasn't just the money. Jacob leaned in, his voice low. 20 years ago, I made a vow to a woman much like you, my sister before she passed. Said I'd look out for folks holding down the fort against the storm. We ride for that now. Iron oath means something. Emily's chest tightened, memories of her own broken oaths flooding back, promises to her mother, to herself, buried under grief. The bikers filed out, engines roaring back to life, but Jacob lingered. If trouble comes knocking, you call this number. He pressed a worn card into her palm, etched with a simple oath. Loyalty above all. As the convoy faded into the dawn's first light, taillights winking like fireflies, Emily sank onto a stool, sobs shaking her frame. Not from sorrow, but from the raw surprise of grace in a cynical world, a gesture that reignited a spark she'd thought long dead. The sun crested the horizon, painting the diner in golden hues, the dust settling like a benediction. Emily wiped her face, pocketing the card, a new resolve hardening in her veins. Little did she know, this act of kindness was the thread pulling her into a web of loyalty and reckoning, where old promises would collide with fresh threats, and the iron oath would ride not just for the road, but for her. Outside, the desert stretched endless, but for the first time in years, Emily felt the pull of something bigger, a chosen family born from a free meal and a tear-streaked dawn. The engine's echo lingered, a promise of storms yet to come. The morning light filtered through the diner's grease-streaked windows, turning the chrome stools into beacons of reluctant hope. Emily Harper stood behind the counter, her fingers tracing the edge of Jacob's card, the paper worn soft from countless journeys. The envelope of cash sat tucked in the register, a secret talisman against the bank's shadow. She'd barely slept, replaying the night, the rumble of engines, the warmth of shared stories, the unexpected weight of their generosity. For the first time in years, Harper's Haven felt less like a grave and more like a heartbeat, pulsing with possibility. But as she brewed the first pot of coffee, the phone rang, shrill and insistent, slicing through the quiet like a warning. It was the bank manager, his voice oily with false sympathy. Mrs. Harper, we've reviewed your account, but the payment's overdue. Foreclosure proceedings start at noon. Clear out by then, or it's the sheriff's call. Emily's grip tightened on the receiver, the dial tone buzzing in her ear like angry bees. Noon, just hours away. She glanced at the clock, 8:47 a.m., and the world tilted. The cash from the bikers could cover it, but wiring it in time. The nearest branch was 50 miles east, through blistering heat and mirage-shimmered roads. Her old pickup truck coughed like a dying man. It wouldn't make the trip without breaking down. Panic clawed at her throat, but she swallowed it. Dialing the number on the card with shaking hands, Jacob's voice answered on the second ring, gravelly from sleep, but steady. Thorn. Emily's words tumbled out. The eviction, the deadline, the impossible distance. Silence stretched, then a low rumble of affirmation. Sit tight, Emily, we're not far. Riders are scattered, but I'll rally what I can. Hold the fort. The line went dead, and she stared at the phone, the promise in his tone echoing her mother's old mantra. Family rides through the storm. But these men weren't blood. They were strangers bound by leather and oath. Could she trust the echo of engines to save her legacy? By 9:30, the first scouts arrived, 3 bikes slicing the horizon, dust trails like comet tails. They weren't the full convoy, but their presence filled the lot with purposeful energy. Noah, a wiry veteran with tattoos mapping old scars, hopped off first, his vest patched with Iron Oath insignia. Jacob sent us ahead. What's the play? Emily explained the rush to the bank, the need for speed. Noah nodded, eyes scanning the diner like a sentinel. "We'll escort you. No truck. Too slow. Ride with us." Her stomach knotted at the thought, straddling a roaring beast, wind whipping her face, but refusal meant losing everything. With a deep breath, she locked the diner, pocketed the envelope, and climbed onto the back of Noah's bike, her arms wrapping tentatively around his waist. The engine growled to life, vibrating through her bones, and they peeled out, the other two flanking like guardians. The ride blurred into a sensory storm. Hot asphalt unspooling beneath them, the desert air sharp with sage and sun-baked earth. Emily's hair streamed behind her, tears stinging from the wind, not fear. For a fleeting moment, she felt alive, untethered from the diner's confines, the freedom of the road mirroring the biker's code. They hit the bank at 11:15, engines idling like thunder in the parking lot, drawing stares from suited tellers. Noah stayed close as Emily strode in, envelope in hand, her chin lifted. The manager's eyes widened at the bikers visible through the glass, their silhouettes imposing. "Full payment," she said, sliding the cash across the desk. He stammered, processing it with hurried fingers, the foreclosure papers crumbling under her resolve. "Cleared," he muttered, avoiding her gaze. Outside, Noah clapped her shoulder. "Oath kept. Jacob's pulling the rest together, heading back now." Relief washed over her like cool rain, but it was short-lived. As they mounted up for the return, a black SUV screeched into the lot, blocking their path. Two men in crisp suits emerged, corporate types, the bank's enforcers, faces hard as flint. "Mrs. Harper," the taller one barked, "this diner's collateral for bigger debts. That payment's a drop in the bucket. We're seizing it today." Emily's blood ran cold. Her ex-husband's loans, hidden in fine print, had ballooned under predatory interest. The bikers tensed, hands hovering near handlebars, but Noah's voice cut calm and steel. "She's paid up. Back off." The suit sneered, flashing badges from a shadowy firm. "Private security, legal claim, move or we call the law." Tension crackled like dry lightning, the desert heat amplifying every breath. Emily stepped forward, voice steady despite the tremor in her knees. "This place is all I have left of my family. You can't just—" Her words choked as memories surged. Her mother's hands kneading dough, her father's laughter over late-night pancakes, promises whispered in the kitchen light. The lead suit advanced, but then the horizon thrummed, a deeper roar, growing legion, headlights multiplied. A phalanx of 20 bikes cresting the rise, Jacob at the fore, his face a mask of unyielding honor. They encircled the lot. Engines a unified growl that vibrated the SUV's windows. No weapons drawn, just presence, 50 strong now, riders converging from side roads, drawn by radio calls and unbreakable bonds. Jacob dismounted, striding forward with the quiet authority of a man who'd faced down worse tyrants. "Gentlemen," he said, voice low but carrying like wind through canyons, "we ride for promises kept. This woman's paid her due. You want the diner? Go through us." The suits faltered, glancing at the sea of leather-clad figures, eyes reflecting the sun like polished shields. Whispers rippled among the bikers. Tales of similar stands, veterans honoring fallen oaths, a brotherhood that turned strangers into kin. One suit muttered into his phone, then back toward the SUV. "This isn't over," he snarled, but the retreat was swift, tires spinning gravel as they fled. Emily stood amid the circle, chest heaving, the weight of their loyalty crashing over her. Jacob turned, his gaze softening. "Iron oath isn't just words. Your mother, your fight, it's ours now." Tears welled, hot and unbidden, spilling down her cheeks, not from fear, but from the profound ache of belonging. These men, marked by their own losses, wars, betrayals, graveside vows, had chosen her cause, weaving her into their tapestry of redemption. As the group revved up for the ride home, Emily wiped her face, climbing back onto Noah's bike. The convoy stretched behind them, a river of chrome and resolve, carrying her not just to safety, but to a reckoning with the shadows of her past. Back at the diner by dusk, the sun dipping low in a blaze of orange and purple, Emily unlocked the door, the bikers forming a protective ring. Inside, the air still held the faint scent of last night's coffee, a reminder of how it all began. Jacob lingered on the porch, lighting a cigarette, the smoke curling like unspoken secrets. Those suits, they're tied to bigger fish. Your ex's mess runs deep, but we've got your back. Rest of the crew's camping nearby tonight. No one's touching this place. Emily nodded, the tears drying into determination. For the first time, the diner felt fortified, not by walls, but by the silent strength of chosen family. As stars pricked the velvet sky, the low murmur of biker talk drifted in, a lullaby of loyalty. But in the distance, headlights flickered, unseen eyes watching, plotting the next storm. The oath had been invoked, and with it a chain of events that would test them all. The campfire crackled under the vast Nevada sky, flames dancing like restless spirits against the encroaching night. Emily Harper sat on a weathered log at the edge of the bikers' makeshift camp, a quarter-mile from her diner. The air thick with the scent of mesquite wood and sizzling venison from a communal spit. The Iron Oath riders had turned the barren patch into a fortress of tents and gleaming motorcycles, their silhouettes hulking guardians in the firelight. Laughter punctured the quiet, deep, rumbling chuckles from men who traded foxholes for highways, sharing tales of rides that bent fate. But Emily's mind wandered, anchored to the envelope's weight in her pocket and the suit's parting threat. Jacob Thorne sat across from her, his face half-shadowed, nursing a tin mug of black coffee that steamed in the chill. "You holding up?" Jacob asked, his voice a low anchor amid the group's murmur. Emily nodded, pulling her knees close, the denim of her jeans whispering against the rough bark. The day's adrenaline had ebbed, leaving a hollow ache. Never thought strangers would circle wagons like this. My ex. He left more than bills, secrets that could drag you all down. Jacob's eyes, reflecting the fire's glow, held no judgment. "We've carried heavier loads. Tell me about him." The words spilled then, halting at first. How Ryan Caldwell had charmed her 20 years ago, a smooth-talking drifter with promises of forever. They'd built dreams on this diner, but his gambling debts festered like an untreated wound, loans from shadowy lenders that ballooned in the dark. When he vanished 5 years back, he'd pinned it all on her, forging signatures that tied the property to his sins. "He swore we'd face it together," Emily whispered, the fire popping as if in sympathy. "But oaths like that, they rust." Around the fire, heads turned, the group's easy banter fading into attentive silence. Noah, the wiry scout from the morning ride, leaned forward, his tattooed arms crossed. "Sounds like the kind of snake we've crossed paths with before. Back in '08, one of our own got tangled in a similar web, debts from a crooked outfit calling themselves Apex Finance. They don't just collect, they crush." Murmurs rippled, nods from grizzled faces marked by faded scars and brotherhood patches. Jacob set his mug down, the clay clinking softly. "Apex? That's the firm's shadow behind those suits. We know their game, preying on the vulnerable, twisting laws into nooses. But Iron Oath was born from breaking chains like that. My old sergeant, before he fell in the sand, made us swear, protect the ones who can't ride alone." Emily's throat tightened, the parallel to her mother's dying words, a vow to safeguard the diner as a haven for wanderers, striking like a match. As the night deepened, stars wheeling overhead like scattered diamonds, Jacob rose, gesturing to the group. "Brothers, we've got a promise to honor here. Emily's fight is ours. Tomorrow we dig into this mess, trace the debts, shake the trees." A chorus of affirmatives rose, fists thumping chests, the ritual binding them tighter than blood. Emily watched, a warmth blooming in her chest amid the chill. These men, veterans like Daniel, a quiet giant with a prosthetic leg from desert storms, and Ethan, whose eyes held the ghosts of lost patrols, choosing her as kin. They weren't saviors in shining armor. They were rough-hewn, their loyalty forged in the roar of engines and the silence of graves. She offered to brew coffee for the watch, slipping back to the diner under Noah's escort. The gravel crunching like brittle bones underfoot. Inside Harper's Haven, the familiar hum of the fluorescent lights greeted her, but now it felt fortified, the counters wiped clean of doubt. As the pot gurgled, a shadow passed the window, a lone figure on foot, pausing at the edge of the lot. Emily's pulse quickened, but Noah's silhouette appeared outside, waving him off with a firm stance. "False alarm," he signaled, but the encounter lingered like a sour note. Back at the fire, she poured mugs, the steam carrying notes of chicory and resolve. Stories unfolded then, not of glory, but of quiet redemptions. Jacob recounting a ride to save a widow's farm from similar wolves, the convoy's mere presence forcing a settlement. Another brother, Samuel, sharing how the oath pulled him from the bottle after his tour, one promise at a time. Yet, as embers dimmed toward midnight, a distant rumble intruded. Not friendly engines, but the low growl of an approaching vehicle. Headlights pierced the dark, multiple sets this time, crawling along the access road like predators. The bikers stirred, hands instinctively checking vests. But no panic, just disciplined readiness. Jacob stood, scanning the horizon. Scouts from Apex, testing the waters. They won't strike tonight, they're cowards in the light. Emily's hands clenched her mug, the heat seeping through porcelain. Fear twisted with gratitude. These men, with their web of contacts from coast to coast, were already plotting, calling in favors from old allies. A network of mechanics, lawyers, who'd traded suits for leathers, all bound by the same unyielding code. The vehicles idled at a distance, engines idling like threats unspoken, then retreated into the night, taillights fading into the void. The camp settled, but sleep evaded Emily. She lay in a borrowed sleeping bag, the desert's cool breath on her skin, listening to the symphony of snores and crackling wood. Jacob's words echoed, promises that rust, but the iron oath polished them anew. For the first time since Ryan's betrayal, she felt the stirrings of trust, not blind, but earned in the fire's glow and the road's endless call. Dawn would bring confrontation, the suits returning with legal hammers, but now she had more than walls. She had riders. A family chosen in the dust and flame. As the first hints of grey lightened the eastern sky, a soft rain began to patter, turning the earth to mud, a cleansing perhaps before the storm. Emily rose, joining the early risers, her resolve as unyielding as the oath that had pulled her from the brink. The diner awaited, its lights a beacon, and with it the unraveling of old shadows. But in the quiet before the ride, she whispered a vow of her own, to stand with them, honor repaid in kind. The engines would roar again, carrying not just her legacy, but a reckoning long overdue. The rain had softened to a misty veil by the time Emily fired up the diner's grill, the sizzle of bacon cutting through the damp morning air like a promise of normalcy. Harper's Haven hummed with early activity. Jacob and a handful of riders had trickled in, claiming stools with the quiet efficiency of men used to dawn patrols. The scent of frying eggs mingled with wet leather and fresh brewed coffee, steam rising in lazy curls that fogged the windows. Outside, the camp stirred, tents folding away under grey skies, engines coughing to life in a staggered chorus. Noah wiped condensation from a booth window, his eyes scanning the horizon where the access road met the scrubland. "Quiet so far," he muttered, but his posture spoke of vigilance, shoulders squared against the unseen. Emily slid plates across the counter, her movements fluid despite the knot in her gut. Last night's revelations had cracked open old wounds. Ryan's shadow loomed larger now. Not just debts, but a trail of deceit that snaked through her life like hidden barbed wire. Jacob forked into his eggs, his gaze steady on her. We made calls at first light, old contacts in the veteran networks, guys who know the underbelly of outfits like Apex. Your ex's loans? They're not just paper, they're leverage for something bigger. Land grabs in the Badlands, pushing folks like you out for corporate playgrounds. Emily paused, spatula hovering, the weight of it settling like the rain on her shoulders. He always talked big, deals that would save us. But it was all smoke. If they come back... A low rumble interrupted, not the friendly growl of Harleys, but the authoritative purr of squad cars. 2 patrol vehicles crested the rise. Lights off, but sirens silent, pulling into the lot with deliberate slowness. Dust clung to their underbellies, the Nevada mud flecking white doors marked with generic sheriff badges. The bikers outside straightened, a ripple of tension passing through the camp like wind over dunes. Jacob set his fork down, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "Stay inside, Emily. Let us handle the talk." She nodded, heart pounding a rhythm against her ribs, peering through the rain-streaked glass as 4 deputies emerged, rain ponchos glistening, faces set in official sternness. The lead deputy, a stocky man with a mustache like saltbush, approached Jacob under the diner's awning, the overhang dripping steadily. "Morning, folks. Got a report of a disturbance last night. Vehicle circling, potential trespass. This your setup?" Jacob met his gaze evenly, rain pattering on his vest. "Just riders resting after a long haul, officer. No trouble here. We're guests of the owner." The deputy glanced at the diner, spotting Emily's silhouette, then back to the sea of bikes. "Heard about some corporate claim on this property. Banks involved, and now we've got a convoy. Looks like a standoff waiting to happen." Murmurs rose from the riders, but Noah stepped forward, voice calm as polished stone. "We're here to keep the peace. Owner paid her dues fair and square. If Apex wants a fight, they go through the law proper, not shadows." Inside, Emily's hands trembled as she poured coffee, the pot clinking against mugs. The deputies conferred in low tones, rain muffling their words, but snippets carried eviction hold, unsecured liens, stand down or warrants. Her mind raced to Ryan, his forged signatures, the nights he'd whispered apologies before slipping away. A promise broken, leaving her to bear the storm alone. But now these men stood in the downpour, unyielding, their loyalty a shield forged from shared scars. Daniel, the quiet giant with the prosthetic, positioned himself at the lot's edge, his presence a silent deterrent, while Ethan scanned the deputies' vehicles, ever the watchful patrol. The lead deputy sighed, rubbing his neck, the rain tracing rivulets down his poncho. "Look, I get it. Folks protecting their own. But Apex has pull. They're filing for immediate seizure today. Judge's clerk called it in. Clear the lot, or we escort you out." Jacob's jaw tightened, but his response came measured, laced with the weight of old oaths. "We've seen men like them before, hiding behind badges and fine print, preying on the honest. This woman fed us when we were empty. No questions. That's worth more than any lien. Tell Apex we're not moving. They want the diner. They face us in court, with truth on the table." The deputy hesitated, eyes flicking to the unified front of riders, then nodded curtly. "I'll relay that, but don't make this ugly." The patrols reversed, tires churning mud, leaving a wake of uneasy quiet. Emily emerged as the taillights faded, the rain easing to a drizzle that beaded on her hair. Jacob turned, water dripping from his beard. "They bought us time, court date set for week's end. But Apex won't wait. They'll push harder." She swallowed, stepping closer, the group's eyes on her like a circle of guardians. "I can't let you all get tangled in my mess. Ryan's sins. They're mine to fix." Noah shook his head, clapping her shoulder gently. "Nah. Iron oath means we carry the load together. Your ex." We'll track him, old roots, whispers from the road. Redemption's not solo, it's the ride. As the morning wore on, the camp transformed into a war room of sorts, maps spread on tailgates, phones buzzing with updates from distant allies. Emily joined them, her voice adding details of Ryan's last known haunts, seedy motels along the California line, gambling dens where debts turned to desperation. Samuel, the brother who'd clawed back from his demons, shared a lead, a tip from a mechanic buddy about a drifter matching Ryan's description, holed up in a border town, still spinning schemes. The rain cleared, sun breaking through in shafts that gilded the wet earth, turning puddles to mirrors. Laughter returned, tentative at first, then full. Stories of past stands against similar foes, victories won not with fists but with unbreaking will. By noon, a plan coalesced. A small team would ride south at dusk, Noah leading, to flush out Ryan and sever the debt's root. Emily watched them prep bikes, oiling chains that gleamed like veins of silver, her chest swelling with a mix of dread and fierce pride. These weren't just bikers, they were her chosen kin, honoring a free meal with a vow that echoed her mother's legacy. As the sun climbed higher, drying the mud to cracked earth, Jacob pulled her aside under the diner's sign, the neon now humming softly. This fight, it's testing us all. But promises like ours, they outlast the storms. Tears pricked her eyes, not from fear, but from the raw beauty of loyalty reclaimed, a family forged in the desert's unforgiving heart. The afternoon stretched, tensions simmering like heat off the asphalt. Emily returned to the counter, serving the riders with renewed purpose, each plate a small act of defiance. But as shadows lengthened, a single motorcycle approached from the east, not Iron Oath, but a lone rider in unfamiliar leathers, slowing at the lot's edge. Whispers spread. Could it be a scout, or worse, Ryan himself? Jacob signaled readiness, the group coalescing without a word. Emily's hand found the card in her pocket. Jacob's number, a lifeline. The rider dismounted, helmet under arm, revealing a weathered face. Not threat, but ally, a veteran contact with fresh intel on Apex's next move. Relief washed through, but the undercurrent remained. The reckoning drew near, pulling them all into its wake. If this story of quiet courage and unbreakable bonds is touching your heart, hit that like button below. It helps spread these tales of redemption far and wide. The sun hung low in the Nevada sky, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the diner's gravel lot, turning the parked motorcycles into jagged silhouettes against the fading light. Emily Harper leaned against the counter inside Harper's Haven, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the only sound breaking the hush. The air still carried the earthy tang of dried mud from the morning rain, mingled with the lingering aroma of coffee grounds she'd swept into the trash. Outside, the Iron Oath riders moved with purposeful quiet, checking tire pressures, securing saddlebags, their low voices weaving plans like threads in a tightening net. The lone rider from earlier, a grizzled ally named William, with salt-streaked hair and eyes sharp from years on the circuit, had dismounted and joined them, his intel a spark that ignited the group's resolve. William's words hung heavy. Apex wasn't content with legal maneuvers. They were mobilizing private muscle, a crew of enforcers en route from the border towns, aiming to intimidate Emily into signing over the deed under duress. "They're not subtle," he'd said, voice rough as sandpaper, pulling a crumpled map from his jacket. "Hit the diner at twilight, make it look like a routine shakedown. Your ex, Ryan, he's their pawn, feeding them leads from whatever hole he's crawled into." Emily's stomach twisted at the name, a ghost from her past rising unbidden. Ryan's charm had once lit her world like the diner's neon, but it had soured into betrayal, his promises evaporating like desert dew. Now, his shadows threatened to swallow her whole. Jacob Thorne paced the lot, his boots kicking up faint dust clouds, the creak of leather punctuating each step. We ride south at dusk. Noah, take Daniel and Ethan. Flush Ryan out, get him talking. No rough stuff. Truth's our weapon." Noah nodded, wiping grease from his hands on a rag, his wiry frame coiled like a spring. "We'll bring him back alive, make him face what he's wrought. Oath demands it." Emily watched from the window, her reflection superimposed over the scene, a woman caught between fragility and fire. These men, bound by vows forged in foxholes and forgotten roads, had woven her into their circle without hesitation. It stirred something deep, a redemption she hadn't sought but now clung to like the diner's faded sign. As the afternoon bled into amber hues, the camp buzzed with preparation. Samuel tinkered with an engine block near the pumps, the metallic clinks a rhythmic underscore to the unfolding drama. He glanced up at Emily as she stepped out, carrying a tray of thermoses filled with hot brew. "Fuel for the road," she said, offering one to Jacob, steam curling like whispered secrets. His fingers brushed hers in the exchange, a fleeting warmth that grounded her. "You're tougher than you know, Emily. Feeding us that night, it reminded us why we ride, not for glory, but for havens like this." She managed a smile, though her eyes betrayed the storm within. Memories flooded, her mother's hands, calloused from years at the grill, pressing a locket into her palm on her deathbed. "Keep it open for wanderers, child. That's the promise." Ryan had shattered that, but these riders were mending it, stitch by silent stitch. The convoy assembled as the sun dipped, a line of chrome beasts gleaming in the dying light, exhaust fumes rising like incense to the gathering dusk. Noah revved his engine first, the growl vibrating through the ground, drawing nods from the group. Daniel, his prosthetic legs steady on the kickstand, mounted with deliberate grace, while Ethan scanned the horizon, ever the sentinel. Emily stood at the diner's edge, arms crossed against the chill creeping in, the desert wind tugging at her hair like an impatient hand. "Be careful," she called, voice carrying over the idling roar. Noah tipped his head, a ghost of a grin breaking through. "Oath's got us covered. We'll drag the truth back by dawn." They peeled out in a thunderous wave, dust swirling in their wake, taillights winking red against the encroaching purple. The lot fell silent, save for the distant call of a coyote, its howl a lonely echo of the wild. Jacob lingered, assigning watches, William and Samuel to patrol the perimeter, their silhouettes merging with the twilight. Emily retreated inside, flipping on the lights. The buzz of fluorescence, a small comfort. She busied herself wiping counters, but her mind raced. What if Ryan had changed? What if his lies ran deeper, ensnaring not just her, but these men who'd chosen her fight? The phone rang once, a wrong number perhaps, but it set her nerves alight. Outside, the first stars pierced the velvet sky, indifferent witnesses to the gathering tension. Hours ticked by, the clock's hands crawling like shadows. Emily poured herself a coffee, the bitter steam grounding her thoughts, when headlights pierced the gloom. Not the friendly glow of returning riders, but harsh beams from an unmarked van, slowing at the lot's fringe. Her pulse quickened. Jacob emerged from the shadows, signaling calm, but his stance was iron. Two figures disembarked, not enforcers yet, but scouts. Crisp shirts under leather jackets, faces obscured by the angle. They approached the diner door, the bell jingling sharply as they entered. The scent of expensive cologne clashing with the homely aroma of lingering grease. The taller one, with a jaw like chiseled stone, scanned the empty booths. "Mrs. Harper, we're from Apex Associates. Last chance to settle amicably. Sign the transfer, and we walk away clean." Emily's hands gripped the counter, knuckles whitening, Jacob's presence a solid wall at her side. "I've paid what's due. The rest is Ryan's mess, not mine." The scout's eyes narrowed, pulling a folder from his coat, papers rustling like dry leaves. "Your signature's on it all. Forgery? That's a stretch. But if your biker friends interfere—" Jacob stepped forward, voice low and unyielding. "They won't have to. Truth comes out in court, or sooner when we find your leverage." Tension thickened the air, the scouts' postures rigid, but Jacob's calm authority held them at bay. They retreated after a terse exchange, the van's engine fading into the night, leaving Emily's heart pounding. Jacob turned to her, his face softened by the diner's warm glow. "They're probing, testing cracks, but we've sealed them." She nodded, tears pricking unexpectedly, not from fear, but the profound weight of his faith in her. In the quiet that followed, she traced the locket at her neck, her mother's promise intertwining with the iron oaths. Redemption wasn't a solitary path. It was this: a shared ride through the dark, toward light earned in loyalty's forge. As midnight approached, the distant rumble returned, not one, but several engines, converging like a promise fulfilled. Noah's team crested the rise, Ryan in tow on a borrowed bike, his face pale and drawn under the moonlight. The reckoning had begun, pulling Emily into its heart, where old betrayals would shatter against unbreakable bonds. The diner lights flickered, a beacon in the night, as the group dismounted, voices low with the gravity of truths yet to unfold. The midnight air hung heavy with the scent of cooling asphalt and distant sagebrush, the diner's neon sign casting a crimson glow over the gravel lot like spilled blood under moonlight. Emily Harper stood frozen at the threshold of Harper's Haven, her breath shallow, the locket at her neck a cold anchor against her racing pulse. The rumble of engines resolved into clarity, 3 bikes pulling in tight formation, their headlights slicing the dark like accusatory fingers. Noah led, his wiry frame silhouetted against the beams, with Daniel and Ethan flanking a 4th rider who lagged, hunched low over the handlebars. Ryan Caldwell. Even from afar, Emily recognized the slump of his shoulders, the defeated tilt of his head, the man who'd once promised her the stars, now reduced to a shadow trailing in their wake. The engines cut off one by one, the sudden silence amplifying the crunch of boots on gravel as the group dismounted. Ryan slid from the bike awkwardly, his borrowed jacket too large, face gaunt and stubbled, eyes darting like a cornered animal's. Noah gripped his arm firmly, but without malice, guiding him forward into the pool of light. Jacob emerged from the diner's side door, his presence a steady pillar, William and Samuel materializing from the perimeter like ghosts summoned by the oath. Emily's legs trembled, but she stepped out, the cool night air brushing her skin like a hesitant touch. "Ryan," she whispered, the name tasting of ash on her tongue. He looked up, his gaze meeting hers, remorse flickering there, mingled with the old slick charm that had ensnared her years ago. "Emily, I didn't—" Ryan started, voice cracking, but Noah's hand tightened, silencing him. The group formed a loose circle under the sign's hum, the desert wind whispering through the scrub as if bearing witness. Jacob nodded to Noah, who recounted the ride south in clipped tones. The border town's dim-lit bar, where Ryan had been nursing a whiskey debt, whispers of Apex's grip leading them straight to him. No chase, no fists, just the weight of the Iron Oath's reputation, drawing him out like a moth to flame. "He knows the full tangle," Noah said, shoving the folder of documents into Jacob's hands, forged papers, ledgers of ballooned loans, Apex's fingerprints smudged across every line. Ryan's schemes exposed, not just gambling, but a deliberate funneling of the diner's equity to corporate sharks. His disappearance, a calculated abandonment to let her drown. Emily's chest tightened, memories crashing like waves, nights in this very diner. Ryan's laughter over her mother's recipes, vows exchanged in the quiet hours. "You swore we'd build this together," she said, voice steady despite the tears welling. "Left me with the ruins, your lies chaining me down." Ryan's shoulders sagged, the fight leaching from him under the circle's unblinking eyes. "I was in over my head. Apex. They came with offers, then threats. thought running would protect you. A hollow excuse, but in his cracked tone, Emily heard the echo of her own buried pain, the isolation of single shifts, the eviction notices piling like unanswered prayers. Jacob flipped through the folder, his face a mask of controlled fury, the pages rustling like dry confessions. The bikers stood sentinel, their silence a profound judgment, leather creaking softly in the breeze. Daniel, his prosthetic leg planted firm, spoke first, voice rumbling low. "We've all broken under weight like that. Wars that scar deeper than skin. But oaths, they demand facing the storm, not fleeing it." Ethan nodded, his patrol-sharp eyes fixed on Ryan. "Apex uses men like you as bait. Time to cut the line." Ryan sank to one knee in the gravel. Head bowed, the submission raw and unscripted. "Take it all, the signatures, the debts. I'll testify whatever it takes. Just don't let them bury her." Tears streaked his dust-caked face, not from coercion, but the shattering realization of chains he'd forged himself. Jacob closed the folder with a decisive snap, the sound echoing like a gavel. "Redemption starts with truth. You'll ride with us to the county seat at dawn, sign affidavits, unravel this web in the light. Apex's hold crumbles when the light hits their shadows." Emily watched, a storm of emotions swirling, anger ebbing into pity, the weight of betrayal lifting like fog under sun. These men, her chosen family, veterans who'd traded medals for miles, promises for purpose, had pulled Ryan from his hole not for vengeance, but justice's quiet poetry. No blood spilled, just the moral gravity of loyalty, bending the night toward dawn. As the group dispersed to secure the documents, Ryan rising unsteadily under Noah's watch, Emily pulled Jacob aside near the diner's wall, the neon's glow painting their faces in soft reds. "Why this? For a waitress who fed you scraps?" Jacob's eyes, etched with old wars, softened. "Because your mother's promise, keeping this haven open, mirrors ours. Iron oath rides for the forgotten oaths, the ones that bind us tighter than blood. You gave us grace that night. We return it, forged stronger." She nodded, tears spilling freely now, hot trails down her cheeks, washing away years of solitary grief. In his embrace, brief, brotherly, the fragments of her world realigned, a family reborn in the desert's unforgiving embrace. Dawn broke slow and golden, the first rays gilding the motorcycles like a benediction. The convoy assembled, Ryan secured in the middle ranks, the folder a talisman of reckoning. Emily stood at the lot's edge, waving as they roared to life, the thunder a symphony of closure. Harper's Haven loomed behind her, no longer a sinking ship but a lighthouse, its light steady against the horizon. Apex's threats would fade in courtrooms bright with truth, Ryan's testimony the key turning locks on her past. She touched the locket, her mother's words alive again, a promise kept, not alone, but with riders who'd chosen her road. The dust settled as the taillights vanished, leaving Emily in the quiet dawn, heart full with the echo of engines, a legacy of honor, redemption woven from free meals and unbreakable bonds. In the heart of the Badlands, Grace had ridden in on Chrome and stayed. Thank you for joining us on this journey of loyalty and quiet courage. If these stories of chosen family and moral stands resonate with you, please subscribe and turn on notifications. We'd love to share more tales like this, straight from the road to your screen.